I would like to go over the assignment. In this assignment, you will be collecting the data entered by the user in a multi-page form. This form extends over 3 pages. There is 1 question per page. So you will need to either use cookies or a session in order to keep the data from one page to another. I have all of the pages for you for this assignment. I have the beginning page, which is an HTML page, and I have the other pages already saved with a PHP extension. And I have the action coded in for every page also. So all you have to do is to write the PHP code. So here we're starting with an HTML file. And if I choose an answer, and these are validated with HTML5. So when I choose an answer and I click Next, it will take me to page 2. I click an answer and click Next, it takes me to page 3. I click an answer and click Next, it takes me to the result page. So on this page, you will tell the user what they entered. Typically, you would use a session to keep data from one page to another. However, a cookie would work also. If you use a cookie, you do not want to set an expiration date because you don't need to keep this data on the user's computer. Here I am on the home page. I choose an age bracket and I click Next. What you want to do, you always want to be testing that you are accurately retrieving values. So here I have on the top of my page the print_r function telling me what values are in my session array. That way I know that I am storing the values correctly. Now I will choose another answer. I will click Next. Now I'm on page 3. Now notice I have 2 of the questions and answers in my array up here. Now I will choose my last answer and I will click Next. And now you see I have the 3 questions and answers up here. So I have 3 session variables and the values. Now notice I have the response written below. I have generated the response using 2 different methods just to show you how to do it. The first method is using a for each loop, and the second method is just echoing back the values from the session variables, similar to what we do with form values. So now I actually want to explain to you how the code works. I think it's important that you understand it. So when we're creating a session, the first thing we need to do is to add the session_start function. This always goes first before any other code, and it needs to be on every page in which you're working with that session. The next thing you always want to do is to check to make sure that the request is coming from the form. Here I am using the $_server global variable, and I am making sure that the request method is post. That's just telling me that this page came from the form. Now I'm looking at my files here in localhost. The reason we check is because we don't want someone somehow stumbling on one of our pages and trying to load it. That page should not load unless it is being called from the form. So here is the error message right here saying that there's a problem, go back and try again. You don't want people accessing pages unless they should be accessing them. And we also have a AND condition and is set $_post age. We're checking to make sure that the user did check one of the values. So we're making sure that a value exists for the radio button. I said earlier that these form elements were validated with HTML5. So why do I need to check? You need to always check. Anything is possible. The user could have an older browser that does not support HTML5. The user could have disabled the JavaScript. In that case, it might not work. So you always want to check every which way to make sure that your values are being transmitted correctly. Okay, so here's our if. If both of these conditions are correctly met, then we set the session. I'm calling the name of the session age because that's what the name of the form element is. It just kind of makes sense. So the value returned from the form right here is being stored in that session. I really don't need to create another variable to hold this value because I'm not working with this value. I'm going to be working with this at the end, and you really don't need to create another variable for that either. You can work with it just as it is. Here is my test, my print_r function. Again, you always want to make sure that your values are being received correctly. So we have an if, else. So if this condition is not true, then we give the user an error message via the exit function, which means that nothing else is executed. All the user sees is this statement here. They are not going to see the rest of the web page. That's what exit does. It stops the script at that point and generates the message. So now on the next page, we're doing the same thing. We have our session_start. We have our if. This time we're asking for the education. We create our session variable to hold the value being sent by the form. This is the value being sent by the form, being stored in the session variable. And here is my test print_r function. This is the last page. Here is my session_start function. Here is my if, which is testing. Now I'm looking at the value coming from income. I create my session variable. I store the value from the form in it. Here is my test echo. Now I will display the values to the user. This is a simple for each, and we have seen this with arrays. So we have the global $_session, which holds all the name value pairs or key value pairs, as $name yields $value. So these are variables. The first variable is holding the key, which is the name. The second is the value. And what we're doing is we're looping through and we're echoing them back. And here is where we would individually tell the user, here's my string, your age is, concatenated with the session variable, which holds that value. Here's my string, your income is, concatenated with the variable that holds the income value. Your education, concatenated with the session variable that holds the education. So there are two ways of outputting. Obviously, this is customized. This is just the result of a loop. I will accept either one for the assignment. Now let's look at how we would do this using a cookie. I would like to remind you that the session is temporarily stored on the user's computer with the cookies. So it's always a good idea to close your browser and start again in order to clear any possible additional values in your cookies array. So I will click an age and I will click next. Notice my array is empty. And when you're working with localhost, the cookie has to get sent back and forth from the server, so you're going to have to reload your page to see anything. All right, there we go. There's the age. Now I will choose an education. I will click next. I don't see it up here, so I have to reload my page. There we go. There's the education. Now I will click an income. I will click next. Again, I don't see it up here. I have to reload the page. In addition to not seeing it up here, what else do I see? I see error messages down here. All right, so that's because we have to reload the page. The code in the body doesn't exist until that cookie comes back. So here, everything is now working. And I'm getting the same values as I did from the session. So let's look at the cookie code. Here we have our if, and we're checking the same things. We're making sure that this request indeed came from the previous form page, and we're making sure that there is a value in this form element being sent. We will use the setCookie function. We will give the cookie a name, and we will set the value. The value is coming from the form element. Do not set an expiration date. If you do, the cookie will stay on the computer. We don't need this information on the computer. It can expire when the user closes the browser. Here's our test print $_cookie, the global variable. So we have an if else. On the next page, we're doing the same thing. We're looking at the value coming back from the form for education. We set another cookie. We give it a name. We store the value in it. We have our test print _r function. Now we're on the last page. We're looking at the income. Again, we have our test if condition. We're looking at the value coming back from the form element with the name of income. We use the setCookie function. We give the cookie a name. We give the cookie a value. We have our test print _r function so that we can see that our values indeed are being sent correctly. The code that I'm using to generate the output is identical to the session code, except I'm swapping out $_cookie for where I had $_session, because it's an array. We're using the for each loop. Here is our array, and we're getting the name value pairs or the key value pairs. So we're looping through each array element, echoing back the name and the value, separated by a colon. Or you can use several different echo statements using a string concatenated with the cookie variable, a string concatenated with the cookie variable, a string concatenated with the cookie variable. So you will be working with a multi-page form. There are 4 pages. You will store the values from page to page, and on the last page, show the user their responses.